So I'm working on this Ram 1500. It needs CV shafts on the front left and front right side. I already went ahead and knocked out the front left side. It's all done. So on the right side, as soon as I took the wheel off, I noticed some issues. First of all, you can see that isn't where it belongs. They should be together, but it's not a big issue, right? It's something minor. Over here, look at that. Look at the nut. Not even tight. This is very dangerous. This is an extreme issue right here. If that nut were to continue to back itself off, you can see it's close to coming off. So if the owner would have just continued to drive, this would have popped out. This wheel would have went some other way and just caused all kinds of damage, accidents, hurt people, kill people. This is absolutely crazy. Now, if we look back here, you can see it has a brand new strut assembly. So someone was recently in here. I don't know who did this, but whoever was in here last clearly forgot to tighten the outer tie rod, and that's very dangerous. So I'll let the owner know about this. As you can see on the right side, I got the new axle installed. Everything's going pretty well. Another issue that I noticed is when I was removing the brake caliper, the two bolts that hold the brake caliper to the knuckle, they were also loose. This is pretty scary, guys. It's a scary situation. If a shop did this, this is not great at all. If the owner did this because he was like doing a DIY, he just needs to be a little bit more careful with what he's doing. Anyway, let me go ahead and wrap up this job. Alright, so here's the water pump. I took everything apart. You could see the coolant dripping. And if we look up here where the water pump mounts, you see the liquid back there? I'm going to go ahead and blow it out. And we're going to see it redevelop again. There it goes. Hopefully you can see that. This right here doesn't look like a bad water pump. This looks like someone who installed it didn't do a good job. Guys, here I have a 2014 Chevy Cruze with the 1.4 turbo. So this car actually has a pretty long history with me. Not long, I've only been working on it recently, but I've just been seeing this car way too much. Okay, it's frustrating. So anyway, the car was throwing turbo codes. Put the camera inside turbo. You could see the housing was cracked. I replaced the turbo, right? Okay, new turbo, that's fine. Before it came to me though, let me backtrack. She had a coolant leak and she took it to a shop, and the shop said, oh, your reservoir is leaking, which it is common for those things to crack and leak, so they replaced it, right? She still had a coolant leak. Anyway, after that is when she brought it to me because of the check engine light. I replaced the turbo, and if you know anything about these, they have coolant lines to go into the turbo, right? Okay, so I replaced the turbo. And that's a pretty big job, and when I'm doing something like this, I want to be 100% sure that something like those oil lines that go to the turbo or the coolant lines aren't leaking before I give the car back to the customer, because I know I'm just going to end up having to redo the job if I, did something crappy like that. So I'm pretty picky about that type of stuff. Anyway, within a week or two, she says, hey, my car is leaking coolant still, remember, she had that thing replaced. So I told her, okay, bring it over here, I'll look at it. I told her, your water pump is leaking. So we got in contact with the dealer, and of course the car's still under warranty or some sort of recall, something like that. So it was either she pays me to do the water pump or take it to the dealer and they're going to do it for free, which is a no-brainer, right? Anyone would take the option of a free job. So she took it to a dealer. They replaced the water pump. Within a week or so, she's still adding coolant, and she's saying, hey, it's still leaking. So I told her, bring it back over here. I look at it and I say, the water pump is still leaking. She takes it back to the dealer and they tell her, oh, whoever put the turbo on, they didn't do it right, and the coolant is leaking from behind the turbo. Which I know that's a lie, because yeah, like I just said, I'm real picky about this type of stuff, and I've looked into it. There's nothing leaking back there as far as that line that goes to the turbo. So she brings it over here, and I find that this coolant neck right here, everything's made out of plastic nowadays, was leaking. So I replaced it, and as you can see, if we look down there, it is nice and dry now. No more coolant leaking from there. She brings it back to me, and I look at it real good, and I even get up there with the mirror and the camera, take pictures. I show her, no, this water pump is leaking. So she takes it back to the dealer, and they replace the water pump for the second time, right? Okay, 2 water pumps from the dealer. And just a few days after getting it back from the dealer, the reservoir is empty again. There's a puddle underneath her car every morning. She said she has to add a gallon of antifreeze like every 2 days. That's excessive, guys. That's crazy amount of fluid. She brought it back to me, and guess what I found? That's right. The water pump is leaking again. So she told me, what's going on here? Is the part going bad that fast? Or, you know, what's going on? Why is the part failing so fast? I told her, I don't think it's likely that the part is failing so fast. I think this is an installation error. I told her, you know what? Let me take apart your car. I want to see what's going on. I told her, sure, you could take it back to the dealer and have them put on a 3rd water pump. But I'm like, look at this headache you're dealing with. Do you really want to go back to that dealer again? Or do you just want me to do the job? She's like, you know what? Go ahead, do it. I take everything apart that I have to, just so I could get a really good look at the water pump with the pulley, the belt out of the way. I pressurize the cooling system. You can see my pressure pump right there. And then I saw that the coolant was leaking right out the top of the water pump, right where the gasket is. So that's when I texted her, and I told her, even sending her pictures and video, I told her, nothing's wrong with the actual pump itself. This leak is basically installation error, okay? Whoever did this did a piss poor job. So this is a gasket that's leaking. And she was like, you know what? Go ahead, fix it. I checked with AutoZone. AutoZone has a Velcro gasket. I'm not a fan of this, but this is what we have to work with. So I went ahead and picked up the gasket, right? I finally get the pump fully taken off. Here goes a brand new gasket the dealer put. But look what we see up here. And exactly in the spot where this thing was leaking from. Every time I would pressurize it, the coolant was pulling up here, leaking out. And every time I blow the coolant out with compressed air to clean up the area, immediately it started pulling up again. That is the old gasket, guys. Whoever did this at the dealer, they couldn't even be bothered to completely remove the old gasket before slapping this thing together and sending this lady down the road. She has spent so much money in coolant and nothing but headaches on this car. Her driveway stained. I don't blame her for not wanting to take it back to the dealer a third time, but Jesus, right? Come on now. And I guess the whole point of this rant is for the people who believe that the dealer is the end all be all, that if I take my car back to the dealer, it's going to be fixed just like it was from factory. As if robots are fixing your car. Guys, it is not robots fixing your car. It's David. You get what I'm saying? So, they're human. They make mistakes. Granted, this one's a bit egregious because that's pretty... I mean, that is piss poor. If you work at a dealer and you're doing this type of work, you should be fired. I'm sorry. Go get a different job because it is not for you. That's absolutely crazy. I would never in my life think of slapping a new water pump and a brand new gasket on over something like that. It's blowing my mind. But again, like I said, the whole point of this video, this short video, is to make people aware that the dealer is not always the answer. The answer is finding someone who's going to fix your car the right way the first time. All right, end the video, guys. If you have some comments, leave them below. Let me know what you think about this whole situation. I know it's pretty shitty, but it is what it is. And of course, once I'm done here, I will be pressuring the system to confirm that I don't have a leak here before I button everything up. What it looks like after I was done cleaning everything, you can see the old gasket material has been removed and the entire mating surface has been cleaned. Here goes a water pump. This surface has been cleaned, as well as this side where the thermostat goes. So it's ready to accept the brand new gasket. Here's a short update. You could probably see the steam coming off of the engine mount there because I just took it out the parts washer. I installed the water pump and I let it sit for about 2 hours to let the silicone cure. And I know what you're saying, silicone? Well, silicone only got put on the side of the gasket that mounts to the water pump, not the side that goes to the engine block. I hope that makes sense. Basically, the next time this car needs a water pump, you know, and you have to replace the water pump, the gasket's going to come with it, and nothing's going to, or in theory, nothing should stick to the block. So don't get your panties in a bunch. And after the 2 hours, I filled it up with coolant. I put my pressure tester on it, and not a single drip came out of this water pump. Looking really good. And like I showed you guys before, I did clean up the side of the engine block. Before, that thing was all nasty, you couldn't see anything. And this is why I cleaned up the engine mount as well, because now you look down inside of there, everything looks nice and clean back there. If it would focus, there we go, you can see everything back there looks relatively clean. It looks a million times better than how it used to look. And it's nice to clean things because, number one, it shows you care about your work. Number two, if there are any future leaks, it's super easy to identify them. So I'm really happy with the way this is turning out. I'm going to go ahead and finish wrapping up this job. So I'm working on this Buick, what is it, 3.6 liter, okay? Just finished changing the spark plugs, wrapped up the whole job, go to start the engine, not running great. There's a misfire, check engine light turns on immediately, cylinder 5, misfire. It's the one back here, and thankfully there's just enough space to squeeze it out of this hole right here without removing the whole intake manifold again. And what's funny is when I was initially taking this apart, I noticed that cylinder 5 is the only one that has a different aftermarket ignition coil. Blue Streak. Has anyone ever heard of this? I've never heard of it. I've never seen this brand before. Anyway, the problem is it's misfiring now on cylinder number 5, the one with this aftermarket coil. But the thing is, when it drove in here, it wasn't misfiring. It was just here for a regular tune-up. So I'm like, what are the chances that this coil just, some miracle, just went bad out of nowhere, right? So I take it out and I'm looking, and I look inside of there and I'm like, that looks odd. There should be some sort of a spring inside of there, right? So I go ahead and pull this coil out only because it's super easy to get to, just to compare, and sure enough, there is a spring inside of there. So I go looking in the rear spark plug tube with a mirror. The spring is not in there. It's gone. That's why this thing is misfiring. The coil didn't just randomly go bad. At some point when I was removing the coils, the spring fell out. Can't seem to find it. What's weird is when I took out each coil, I didn't move them around anywhere. As soon as I took them out, I laid them right up here, all 6 of them. And I looked up here, I don't see the spring anywhere. So the only thing I could think of is it must have just fell out the second I pulled it out of that spark plug tube, and that landed God knows where. Okay, I looked underneath the car, can't find it. So I'm stuck between a rock and a hard place because it needs that spring in order to fire. And I don't want to buy an expensive coil over a stupid little spring. I'm sure as heck I'm not going to press this onto the customer. It's not their fault. And I went looking through my inventory, and old ignition coils is just something I don't keep around here because I don't see the point to that. You know, if it's bad, throw it out. But I guess I just learned a lesson today. Maybe it won't be the worst idea to keep some of these little springs around because you'll never know. So the only thing I could possibly think of is to take one of my Denso ignition coils out of my K series. I know sacrifices have to be made, and of course the coil doesn't fit this car, but it does have a little spring inside of there, because almost all ignition coils have that spring. So I'm gonna sacrifice the spring off of my K series engine to get this lady's car up and running again, and I'll deal with the problem myself in the future, because this is my problem. I created this. I lost a little spring, which I've never seen them randomly fall out like that, but I guess that's the thing. So yep, this sucks. Anyways, that's it. Short video. Just you know, complacency. Don't get caught up in thinking, oh, simple job, spark plug, just pull them out. Sometimes even little things slip past you. This hurts me more than it hurts you. Sorry. And there we have it. There goes our little spring that we need. It's killing me to do this, but gotta fix my mistake. The deed is done, everything is put back together, and in fact, the coil that was misfiring, I just moved it up front. The cheapo, no-name brand, Blue Streak. Put it right there. It's super easy to get to, just in case I'm wrong, but we obviously saw it was missing a spring. It should start and run just fine. You can see our code right there, cylinder 5 misfire. And just as I thought, super smooth. Idling nice and smooth, no flashing check engine light. All right, problem fixed. Don't you hate when a car comes in running good, you do some work to it, and all of a sudden it's running worse than how you started? You're like, oh crap, what did I do? Oh man, it sucks. Anyway, someone remind me the next time I get a Honda in here changing ignition coils to take out one of those little springs so I could put it back in my K series engine. Guys, so it's like 2 days later, right? I'm here doing spark plugs on some Buick, a different Buick. And I grabbed my spark plug tool, the socket, and before I put it onto the extension, I saw something sticking out of here. Guess what I found? The freaking spring out of that other Buick that we lost. It was actually sitting like up here in this portion. That's exactly what I saw when I picked up my socket. So this is how, well, you're probably wondering, well, of course, didn't you check your socket when you lost the spring? Yes, I checked my socket. I grabbed my socket and I did this. I'm like, there's no spring in there, so it's not here. It must have just gotten lost somewhere. It actually pushed through the rubber grommet inside of there and came out the top, and I didn't notice that. Isn't that crazy? So that freaking Buick got away with the spring off of my K-Series engine. Now I'm pissed.